Boston, 2020. The city felt like a pressure cooker with a broken valve. COVID-19 had forced the rest of the world to hit the brakes, but inside my house in Revere, the world had been spinning out of control for a decade. My name is Leo. At 20 years old, career guidance was a concept as foreign to me as a vacation in the Maldives. My home was a literal war zone. My parents didn't parent, they coexisted in a state of high atmospheric pressure. If they weren't screaming at each other over past due electric bills, they were ignored each other in a silence so thick and bitter it tasted like battery acid in the back of my throat. They didn't support my dream of going to college because they didn't have a dime to give, and honestly, I didn't even know what I'd study anyway. I had no mentors, no older cousins to look up to, and no teachers at my crowded public school who gave a damn about the quiet kid in the back row. I was a ghost in my own life. I had one singular, burning motivation: get the hell out of this house before it swallows me whole. One night, lying on a mattress that smelled like old dust while my dad threw a ceramic plate in the kitchen downstairs, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through Indeed. And then, it popped up like a neon sign in a dark alley: Amazon delivery driver. $19 per hour. In 2020, $19 an hour felt like a king's ransom to a kid with zero experience and a bank account that currently sat at $4.12. I did the math in my head immediately. 40 hours a week, maybe some overtime, that was enough for a car, a cheap room in Quincy or Somerville, and a ticket to a life where nobody threw plates. I loved driving. I loved the idea of being alone in a van, exploring the city, and not having a boss breathing down my neck in some gray office cubicle. I didn't know then that $19 was actually a discount rate. I didn't know that guys at UPS or FedEx were making way more for doing the same thing. I just saw a way out, and I grabbed it. The application was a blur. Within 48 hours, I was invited to a warehouse for an interview. I didn't realize it at the time, but I wasn't actually applying to work for Amazon. I was applying for a DSP, a delivery service partner called Apex Logistics. Amazon is smart. They don't want the liability of thousands of drivers, so they outsource everything to small third-party companies. You wear the Amazon blue, you drive the Amazon van, but on paper, you're invisible to them. If you get hurt or sued, Amazon just shrugs and says, "Not our problem. Talk to Apex." The office was a cramped, windowless room with a thin carpet that smelled like stale coffee and wet shoes. The owner was a guy named Bill, mid-50s, looked like he hadn't slept since the 90s, and constantly checked a spreadsheet on his laptop. His son, Marcus, was the vice president. Marcus was maybe 25, wore expensive sneakers, and walked around with an air of unearned authority that made my skin crawl. Then there was the dispatcher, a guy named Kev who sat behind a row of monitors. He's not much older than me, looking like a man whose soul had been replaced by a GPS tracker. "You got a clean license, kid?" Marcus asked, leaning back in his chair. "Yeah." "No tickets, no accidents," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Good. We're short-staffed. Half our guys are home collecting unemployment because of the pandemic. If you can show up on time and not crash the van, you're golden." The training was a joke. It lasted maybe 4 hours. A few superficial videos about safety, a 5-minute talk about how to use the Flex app, and a tour of the warehouse. No mentorship. No career path. Just, here's the phone, here's the vest, don't F up the metrics. My first real day felt like a dream. The warehouse was a massive hive of activity, hundreds of prime blue vans lined up, workers screaming over the sound of conveyor belts, and the humid smell of diesel fumes. Marcus helped me load my nursery route. He grunted, tossing a heavy tote into my van. Only 120 packages. We're easing you in. No trainer is coming with you because of COVID protocols and we have no one free right now. You own your own today. It's easy, you gonna be fine. Good luck. I pulled out of the lot and felt a surge of pure, unadulterated freedom. For the first time in 20 years, I wasn't in that house. I was driving a massive, white panel van through the streets of Brighton, my own music playing, the sun hitting the dashboard. I felt like I had finally made it. But then, reality started to set in. Driving a van that's 10 feet tall and 20 feet long through Boston is a nightmare. The streets are narrow, the drivers are aggressive, and the GPS kept telling me to turn down one-way streets that were blocked by construction. People were leaning out of their car windows, screaming, F you, do you how to drive, and laying on their horns because I was taking too long to parallel park. I hit my first major obstacle at a business complex. I had a package that required a signature, but the lobby was empty. I stood there for 10 minutes, sweating, feeling the pressure of the clock ticking on my app. I called Marcus. Hey, Marcus, I'm at the signature stop but nobody's here. What do I do? Leo, look at the app. There's a help button. Call support. I've got 50 other drivers to manage. I can't hold your hand for one signature. I called support. I waited on hold for 20 minutes while a robotic voice told me how important my call was. By the time someone answered, I was fuming. They told me to mark it as undeliverable and move on. I was already behind according to the app's little progress bar. It was starting to turn red. Around 4 p.m., a shiny Amazon-branded van pulled up behind me. Marcus hopped out. Rescue, he said, looking annoyed. You're moving like a snail, Leo. This was a nursery route. This is only about 20% of what a real route looks like. If you can't handle this, you're gonna drown when the real work starts. I felt my face heat up. I had been working non-stop, skipping my lunch, and I thought I was doing great. And check this out, Marcus pointed to a tiny, almost invisible scratch on the front bumper. Did you do this? No. I haven't hit anything. I said, panicked. Whatever. Listen to me, never report damage on the app. If the app sees damage, the van gets grounded and we lose a vehicle for the week. Just report it to me or my dad privately. We'll deal with it. You didn't do the pre-trip survey this morning? No, Kev didn't mention it. Of course he didn't, Marcus muttered. He took 2 of my bags, threw them into his van, and sped off without another word. I finished at 7 p.m. I was physically exhausted, my legs felt like lead, and my brain was fried from the constant pinging of the app. But as I walked to my car, I felt a sense of accomplishment. I had made almost $200 today. I was one step closer to leaving Revere forever. I didn't know that the nursery route was a trap. I didn't know that $19 an hour was the price for my soul. And I definitely didn't know that next week, The nursery was going to burn down, and the real meat grinder was going to start. The honeymoon phase didn't just end, it was vaporized. Week 2 started on a Tuesday. The sky over Dedham was a bruised purple, heavy with the kind of damp cold that settles in your marrow. I walked into the warehouse feeling like I had a handle on things. Then I opened the Flex app. 250 stops. 410 packages. My heart didn't just drop, it hit the floor and shattered. I looked at the screen, then at Marcus, who was leaning against a pillar, sipping a Dunkin' coffee. "Is this a mistake?" I asked, my voice sounding thin. Marcus didn't even look up from his phone. "That's a full route, Leo. Welcome to the big leagues. Load out in 15 minutes. Don't be the reason we miss our departure window." The warehouse during load out is a fever dream of industrial stress. Blue vests everywhere, the roar of the conveyor belts, and the launch pad marshals screaming through megaphones like they're directing a military invasion. I had 18 totes and 45 overflow boxes, the heavy stuff. Cat litter, adjustable dumbbells, cases of Fiji water. I was throwing them into the van, stacking them 3 high, blocking my side door, blocking my view out the back. I felt like I was playing a high-stakes game of Tetris where the pieces were made of lead. Go. 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 5 minutes. I slammed the back doors shut, my chest heaving, sweat dripping down my face despite the 40-degree weather. I pulled out of the bay and headed toward the one place every driver dreaded, the Seaport District. The Seaport is beautiful if you're a tourist. If you're a delivery driver, it's a labyrinth of glass towers, no parking signs, and security guards with god complexes. I had 40 stops in one apartment complex. 40 stops, but only one stop on the app. It's a trick the system uses to make the workload look smaller. I spent 3 hours in one building. I didn't have a dolly. The good ones had been snatched up by the veteran drivers, and the only one left at the warehouse was missing a wheel. I had to carry 3 oversized boxes, at least 40 pounds each, into a marble lobby. "You can't leave those there," the concierge said, not looking up from his monitor. "The customer note says, lobby delivery," I panted, wiping sweat from my eyes. "I don't care what the note says. Take them up to the 30th floor. Use the service elevator around the back. And don't scuff the walls." I hauled those boxes to the 30th floor. When I finally found the office, a guy in a tailored suit was standing by the glass door. I was drenched in sweat, my vest was crooked, and I smelled like the inside of a van. "About time," he muttered, glancing at his Rolex. As I turned to leave, I heard him whisper to his assistant, "And that, Sarah, is why you finish your degree. So you don't end up like him." The words hit harder than the heavy boxes. I wasn't just a worker to them, I was a cautionary tale. What not to be. By 4 p.m., I realized I was behind. The app's progress bar was a deep, angry red. I was 20 stops behind my projected time. I started to panic. I stopped using my seatbelt properly. I just buckled it behind my back and slipped the shoulder strap over me so that Metrodyne camera wouldn't flag me. I stopped turning the engine off at every stop, even though it was against the rules. I started running. Literally sprinting from the van to the porch and back. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't even stopped to drink water because I was terrified of having to find a bathroom. Around 6 p.m., I pulled over in a dark industrial park, my head leaning against the steering wheel. I was starving. My back was a dull roar of pain. I opened my personal phone and saw a text from my mom. "Your father is home and he's looking for the remote he thinks you hid. Don't come home until he's asleep." I turned the phone off. I had nowhere to go but the next stop. I was at the warehouse at 9 p.m., the last van back. My legs were shaking so hard I could barely walk to the dispatch desk. Kev was there, staring at a monitor that tracked every move I made that day. "You're slow, Leo," Kev said, his voice flat. "Marcus is already complaining." I walked out to my beat-up car, my spirit crushed. I sat there for a second, just trying to breathe. That's when a hand knocked on my window. I jumped, looking up. It was an older guy, maybe 30, with a thick beard and a tired but kind look in his eyes. He was leaning against the van parked next to me. "Long day, huh?" he asked. "The worst," I sighed, rolling down the window. "I'm Brendan," he said, offering a hand. "I've been doing this for 2 years. I saw you in the Seaport route today. That's a career killer route. They give it to the newbies to see if they'll quit." "Why would they do that?" "Because if you survive it, they know they can break you. And if you quit, they just hire another kid from Indeed tomorrow. F Amazon, man. They don't see us as people." He looked at my limping leg. "Get some ice on that. And listen, Leo, don't kill yourself for this job. They'll replace you before your obituary is even printed. Here's my number. You get stuck again, call me. I'll tell you the tricks." For the first time since I started, I didn't feel completely alone. I drove back to Revere, sat in my car in the driveway until the lights in my house went out, and thought about Brendan's words. I was part of a machine. And the machine was hungry. The honeymoon phase was over, but the nightmare was just getting started. By December, the Massachusetts winter had settled in. It wasn't the picturesque, snowy winter you see in movies. It was that brutal, sideways New England sleet that soaks through your waterproof Amazon jacket in 10 minutes and freezes your bones. My route had shifted from the high-rises of the seaport to the wealthy, wooded suburbs, towns like Weston and Lincoln. On paper, it looked easier. Fewer stops, right? Wrong. The stops were miles apart, hidden at the end of winding, unmarked roads surrounded by dense forests. I pulled up to an address that looked more like a state park than a house. The driveway had to be a quarter-mile long, winding up a steep, wooded hill. In the back of my van, I had 3 massive boxes for this guy, some kind of heavy, flat-packed furniture. There was absolutely no way I was walking 150 pounds of dead weight up a slick, icy hill. I made a judgment call and drove the van up the narrow driveway. I parked right in front of the massive double doors, grabbed the first box, and dropped it heavily onto the porch. Suddenly, a guy stepped out onto the second-floor balcony. He was wearing a plush bathrobe and holding a mug of coffee. "Hey! What the F? Do you think you're doing?" he screamed, his voice echoing off the trees. I wiped the sleet out of my eyes. "Amazon delivery, sir. Just dropping off your packages. How dare you drive that piece of S van on my driveway," he roared. "Do you know how to drive?" You're going to ruin my pavement. Get off my property. I stood there, soaked and freezing, staring at a man who was treating me like a burglar for delivering the very things he had ordered. I tried to explain, "Sir, they're heavy, I couldn't carry, I don't care. Get out before I blow your head off." My heart hammered against my ribs. I scrambled back into the van, threw it into reverse, and back down the quarter-mile driveway, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I was doing him a service, but in his eyes, I was peasant trash dirtying his expensive asphalt. 15 minutes later, I pulled up to a more rural property. A rusted chain-link fence, an overgrown yard, and a faded sign on the gate, "Beware of dog." The customer note on the app was in all caps, "Leave at front door or I will report you. Do not call." I grabbed the package, unlatched the gate, and took exactly 3 steps into the yard. I didn't even hear a bark. I just heard the heavy, rapid thud of paws on the wet grass. I looked up and saw a massive pitbull, muscles rippling under its coat, charging straight at me with its teeth bared. Pure survival instinct took over. I dropped the box, spun around, and dove for the van. I threw myself into the driver's seat, twisting my ankle hard on the metal step as I yanked the door shut. The dog slammed into the side of the van, barking so viciously I could see its spit hitting the window. My chest was heaving. My ankle throbbed with a sharp, blinding pain. I marked the package as "delivered, front porch," even though it was sitting in the mud near the gate. I drove away, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. By 4 p.m., the sun was completely gone, swallowed by the winter dark. My backup camera had died 3 stops ago. I texted Marcus, and his reply was instant: "We have no spare vans. Deal with it. Do not report it on the app." I was deep in the woods, navigating blind. But worse than the broken camera was the pain in my lower stomach. I had been holding my bladder for 6 hours. There were no gas stations out here. No Dunkin' Donuts. No fast food joints. Just endless trees and mansions with locked gates. I was doing the math in my head. If I drove 20 minutes off my route to find a bathroom, I'd be 40 minutes behind. Marcus would call. Kev would flag me. I'd be forced to rescue someone else later as punishment. I remembered what Brendan had told me. I looked at the empty water bottle they handed out at the station, the one I thought was a nice perk. "Now you know why they give you the wide-mouth bottles," Brendan had joked grimly. I pulled over to the side of a pitch-black, dirt road. I turned off the engine. I crawled into the back of the van, stumbling over the piles of oversized boxes in the dark. It was freezing cold. I unzipped my pants and peed into the plastic bottle. I stood there in the dark, surrounded by cardboard boxes, shivering. A wave of profound disgust washed over me. I felt subhuman. I was an American citizen, working for one of the richest companies in the history of the world, and I was pissing in a bottle in the back of a cargo van like an animal because the algorithm didn't allow time for basic human bodily functions. Suddenly, a flashlight beam cut through the front windshield, followed by a loud bang on the side door. "Hey! Who's in there?" a voice yelled. I froze, zipping up frantically and tossing the warm bottle behind a tote. I scrambled to the front seat and rolled down the window. A homeowner was shining a massive mag light right in my eyes. "What are you doing parked on my road?" he demanded. "Just Organizing my packages, sir, I stammered, my face burning with humiliation. Well, organize them somewhere else. You look suspicious. He stood there watching me. I put the van in drive, but the road was a dead end. I had to U-turn. With a dead backup camera and a flashlight blinding me, I threw it into reverse, praying I wouldn't hit his car. Crunch. I backed right into a thick pine branch. It scraped loudly against the roof, but I didn't stop. I threw it into drive and sped off into the night. When I finally limped back into the warehouse at 9:30 p.m., I was physically and mentally broken. My ankle was swollen, and my boots were caked in mud. Kev was waiting at the dispatch desk, glaring at his monitor. Leo. We got a Tier 2 infraction on you today, he said without looking up. What? For what? The house with the dog. Customer reported the package stolen or missing. They said you left it by the gate. There was a pit bull. I yelled, finally snapping. It tried to maul me. I barely made it back to the van. You want me to get torn apart for a pair of socks? Marcus walked over, his arms crossed. Watch your tone, Leo. The app said, front door receive. You left it at the gate. If a package gets stolen, Amazon refunds the customer and dings our company's scorecard. You cost us money today. I almost got bit. But you didn't, Marcus said coldly. Next time, honk the horn until they come out, or call support. Do your job. I walked out to the parking lot, my vision blurring with tears of pure rage. Brendan was leaning against his car, smoking a cigarette. He saw my face and sighed, offering me a drag. They hit you for the dog house, didn't they? Brendan asked quietly. I nodded, my voice shaking. How is it my fault? The customer let a dangerous dog out knowing a package was coming, and I get penalized. Brendan exhaled a cloud of smoke into the freezing air. Because to Amazon, the customer is God, and you are a trash can. They know customers lie, they play the system, but they still refund the money and punishment you anyway, 'cause the customers are prime, their last smile is more important than our safety. It is what it is, bro. I looked at my van parked in the lot. The side was still covered in mud and pine needles. I don't know how much longer I can do this, Brendan. You don't have to do it forever, he said, patting my shoulder. Just do it until you find the exit. But as I drove back to my screaming parents and my miserable room in Revere, I realized I couldn't see an exit anywhere. The dull ache in my leg had been a constant companion for months, a lingering souvenir from jumping over retaining walls and that terrifying sprint from the pit bull. But the final breaking point happened during yet another late-night rescue mission for Joshua. It was pitch black in rural Massachusetts. I had just dropped a package off on a porch and was making my way back to the van down a steep, unlit grassy hill. I never saw the hole. My foot sank, my ankle twisted violently with a sickening pop, and a sharp, blinding pain shot up my leg. It was a severe sprain. Gritting my teeth, I somehow managed to limp through the rest of the deliveries, finishing the route on pure adrenaline and stubbornness. I came back to the warehouse. I stood at the dispatch desk in the warehouse, pointing down at my swollen, bruised ankle. Brandon stood firmly by my side, his face tight with disapproval at how the situation was being handled. Kevin, the dispatcher, just chuckled, treating my injury like a joke, while the owner crossed his arms, his face twisting into a scowl of pure annoyance at the inconvenience of being a driver down. Taking a much-needed sick day, I lay in bed, exhausted. The following morning, a text lit up my screen. It was from the boss. It started with a fake, apathetic check-in before immediately pivoting to the real reason for the text. "Hey, how's the leg? Can you come today? We really need your help, one guy off today." I stared at the bright screen, feeling the deep throbbing in my ankle. The audacity of the text hung in the air. In that moment, Brandon's voice echoed clearly in my mind, "Take care of yourself, man. They don't care about you, they only care about money." I felt a sudden, empowering surge of clarity. I didn't type out an apology. I didn't make excuses. I just typed a blunt, straightforward reply, "No, I cannot come in. My ankle is severely sprained. I am focusing on my health right now and I will not be returning until I am completely healed." I hit send, tossed my phone onto the mattress, and finally let myself rest. The physical and mental toll of the job was turning me into a zombie, but that Friday, I actually had a reason to feel alive. Her name was Maya. We had been talking on Snapchat for a few weeks, and she had finally agreed to go out with me. We set a date for 8 p.m. at a bar in downtown Boston. I woke up that morning feeling a surge of energy I hadn't felt since my first day. I just needed to crush my route, get back to the station by 6:30 p.m., drive home, shower the van smell off me, and go be a normal 21-year-old guy for one night. I looked at my itinerary, 310 stops, 480 packages. It was massive, but I didn't care. I was running on pure adrenaline. To finish a route that big by 6:30 p.m., you can't just work hard, you have to cheat the system. Brendan had taught me how to bypass the Netrodyne camera, the 4-lensed black box mounted on the windshield that watched your eyes, your speed, and your seatbelt. I buckled the seatbelt behind my back and just slipped the shoulder strap over my chest to trick the camera. I took my work phone, the one the app tracks, and shoved it deep into my backpack so the Netrodyne wouldn't register distracted driving when the van hit a pothole. I used my personal phone for GPS. I didn't turn off the engine at stops. I kept the side door wide open while driving through residential neighborhoods, hopping out while the van was still rolling to a stop, sprinting to the porch, dropping the box, and sprinting back. My twisted ankle from the pitbull incident was screaming at me, but I popped 3 Advil and kept running. I was organizing packages on the passenger seat, sorting them by street so I didn't even have to go into the back of the van. By 6:15 p.m., I had 5 stops left. I was practically vibrating with excitement. I had beaten the algorithm. I was going to make my date. Then, my personal phone rang. It was Kev from dispatch. "Leo. You're flying today. Good f***ing job," Kev said. His voice was too nice. My stomach dropped. "Thanks. I'm almost done. Heading back in 10. Yeah, about that. I need you to go rescue Joshua. He's out in the western woods and he's 40 stops behind. I just sent you the coordinates." "Kev, no," I pleaded, staring at the steering wheel. "I have plans tonight. A date. I busted my ass all day to finish early." "Leo, listen to me," Kev's voice turned icy. "We are a team. If you refuse a rescue, you're refusing work. Don't be selfish, bro, you gotta help us out. Go get Joshua's totes. Hurry up. He hung up. I sat there in the idling van, the heater blasting, feeling the life drain out of me. I had no choice. If I lost shifts, I couldn't pay my car insurance. The trap snapped shut. I drove 20 minutes deep into the dark, winding roads of Weston. My backup camera was still broken, making navigating the narrow dirt roads a nightmare. I found Joshua's van parked on the side of the road. The engine was running, the cab lights were on, and Joshua was sitting in the driver's seat, his feet up on the dashboard, watching a YouTube video on full blast. I pulled up, threw my van into park, and marched over. I yanked his side door open. The back of his van was a disaster, packages thrown everywhere, totally disorganized. "What's up, bro?" Joshua smiled lazily, not even taking his feet off the dash. "Kev sent me." "Give me your totes," I snapped. "Man, they gave me way too much F-king shit today," Joshua complained, stretching his arms. "I'm so tired of this job. It's ridiculous. I wanna quit so bad, bruh." I stared at him. He had 150 stops today. I had 310. I knew exactly what he was doing. Brendan had warned me about guys like Joshua. He was milking the clock. He was moving slow on purpose so he wouldn't have to do the work, forcing guys like me to pick up his slack. Or worse, he was trying to get fired for poor performance so he could collect COVID unemployment checks. I wanted to punch him. I wanted to drag him out of the van and make him deliver his own packages. But arguing would just waste more time. "Just help me load them," I growled. He handed me 3 heavy totes. About 45 stops. By the time I finished Joshua's route, it was pitch black. The houses in Weston were massive, the driveways were steep, and the addresses were impossible to see. Every step up those icy driveways felt like a nail being driven into my heel. I finally pulled back into the warehouse at 10:15 p.m. The lot was empty. I clocked out, handed Kev my keys without saying a word, and walked to my car. He knew I was so pissed. I sat in the driver's seat and pulled out my phone. My heart was heavy. I opened Snapchat. "Leo, 8:45 p.m. I'm so sorry, Maya. Work held me back. I had to rescue another driver. I'm almost done. Can we meet at 10:30 or maybe another night? Maya, 9:30 p.m. Don't bother. Maya, 9:35 p.m. I hate being stood up. If you didn't want to go out, you should have just said so instead of lying about work. Have a nice life." Message could not be sent. Tap to retry. She had blocked me. I dropped the phone onto the passenger seat. I didn't cry. I was too exhausted to cry. I just felt incredibly, completely empty. I drove to a Wendy's, bought a $5 Biggie Bags combo, and parked in the empty lot. I sat there eating cold fries, staring out the windshield at nothing, swallow all my tears. I was working 55 to 60 hours a week. I had no friends, no girlfriend, no life, and I was destroying my body. And for what? After taxes, I brought home barely $1,000 a week. It's like they're robbing me. My phone buzzed. A text from Brendan. "Brendan, hey man. You survived the rescue. Leo, Barely. Lost my date. Sitting in my car eating crab foods. I can't do this anymore, B. A minute later, another text came through from him. It was a screenshot of a chart going up, followed by a message. Brendan, look at this. Dogecoin. People on Reddit are pumping it. Elon Musk is tweeting about it. It's a joke coin, but the volume is insane. Brendan, bro, we bust our asses for pennies while rich kids make millions tapping their phones. The system is rigged against us. We have nothing to lose. I'm throwing my saving at it. I looked at my bank app, $9,125. It would take me many months to save that up again. It was my safety net. But what was I saving for? A life I hated? A future of peeing in bottles and getting screamed at by rich people? I realized I didn't want a safety net anymore. I wanted a lottery ticket. I downloaded a crypto exchange app right there in the Wendy's parking lot. The price of Dogecoin was sitting at $0.002. I didn't think about it. I didn't overanalyze it. I linked my bank account, typed in $9,125, and hit buy. I locked my phone, started my car, and drove back to my toxic house in Revere. I had $0 to my name, but strangely, for the first time in months, I actually fell asleep the moment my head hit the pillow. The grind didn't stop. It just became my new normal. A full year passed. The seasons changed, but the inside of the Amazon van stayed exactly the same. The route was still a nightmare of endless stops and packages piled to the ceiling. The customer requests were still entitled and insane. We were perpetually short-staffed, and the app still tracked my every breath. I had become numb to it. I stopped running to the porches. I stopped skipping my lunches. I realized that the harder I worked, the more work they gave me. So, I paced myself. I survived. My only saving grace was Brendan. We talked every day on our routes, complaining about Marcus, laughing at the ridiculous customer notes, and keeping each other sane. As for my investment in Dogecoin, I hadn't looked at the app in months. It was a joke coin. A pipe dream I bought when I was at rock bottom. Until one Tuesday night in the spring of 2021. I was lying in my bed. Downstairs, my parents were arguing about the water bill again, their voices carrying through the thin floorboards. My back was aching from hauling boxes of dog food up 3 flights of stairs all afternoon. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. Then it vibrated again. And again. It was Brendan calling. "Leo," he yelled the second I answered. He sounded out of breath, like he had just sprinted a mile. "Leo, open the wallet. Open the F-King app right now." "What?" "Brendan, it's 11 p.m., I'm exhausted." "Bro, Dogecoin just hit 40 cents. We made it, bro. We made a lot." My heart stopped. My hand started to shake as I pulled the phone away from my ear, put it on speaker, and tapped the crypto app. The screen loaded. A green chart pointed straight up like a rocket. I looked at my balance. I blinked, rubbing my eyes, thinking I was hallucinating from exhaustion. I closed the app and opened it again. The number was still there. Because I had bought in so early, at fractions of a penny, my desperate $9,125 gamble had compounded into something unimaginable. $1,600,000. After estimated taxes. Yo! I whispered, all the air leaving my lungs. Yo, we're rich. We're F-king rich. WTF. Sell it. Brendan screamed through the speaker. Sell it right now. Don't wait for $1. Get out. My thumb slammed the sell all button. Order executed. The money was locked. It was real. I sat on my cheap mattress in my toxic house, staring at a screen that said I was a millionaire. I didn't cheer. I didn't run downstairs. I just put my face in my hands and wept. The heavy, suffocating chain that had been wrapped around my neck for 21 years just shattered. We met at a Starbucks in East Boston on our day off. Brendan looked like a man who had just been pardoned from death row. I did it, Leo, he said, his eyes shining with tears. I paid off all my debt this morning. I'm putting a massive down payment on a house in the suburbs for my family. My kid is going to have a real college fund. And I'm buying my wife a brand new SUV. She's been driving that beat-up Honda for 10 years. They deserve this. I smiled, incredibly happy for him. That's amazing, Bran. You earned it. What about you, bro? He asked, taking a sip of his drink. What are you gonna do with your racks? I leaned back. I was 21. I had never had more than $2,000 to my name. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe buy a small house somewhere far away from my parents. Get a nice Mustang or maybe an Audi R8. Just have fun, you know. Enjoy my life for once. Brendan set his glass down. He looked at me, not as a coworker, but the way a father looks at a son. That's not a bad idea, Leo, he said softly. But you gotta be smart with your money. A flashy car and partying sounds great now, but you could throw away your whole life in a few years. Cars depreciate. Money runs out faster than you think. You need to make this money work for you, so you never have to put on that blue vest again. His words hit me hard. Deep down, I knew he was right. I had never had anyone teach me about finance, about building a future, or about being a man. My dad was too busy being angry at the world. Brendan was the first person to actually guide me. Yeah, you're right, I said, nodding slowly. I need to think about it carefully. I took a sip of my drink, my mind racing. I thought about the hundreds of miles I drove every week. I thought about the wealthy suburbs, the industrial parks, the gaps in the market I noticed while driving the van. I know what I should do, I said, leaning over the table. I want to open an automatic car wash. A really high-end, touchless one. There are none around my city. People have to drive 20 minutes to get a decent wash. You want to join me? Brendan's face lit up. A slow grin spread across his face. Bet, he said, clinking his glass against mine. I love that idea. Walking into the Apex Logistics office the next morning was the greatest feeling of my life. Marcus was barking orders at the new recruits. Kev was stressed out behind his monitors. Brendan and I walked up to the dispatch desk and dropped our van keys on the keyboard. We're done, Brendan said calmly. Marcus spun around, his face turning red. What? You can't just quit. We're already short-staffed. Who the hell is going to run the western route? I guess you are, Marcus, I said, pulling off my blue Amazon vest and dropping it on his desk. Good luck with the pitbulls. We walked out of the warehouse, breathing in the cold morning air. It smelled like freedom. The transition from delivery driver to business owner wasn't easy. Brendan had a friend in commercial real estate who helped us navigate the brutal Massachusetts zoning laws. We spent months learning about permits, underground water reclamation systems, eco-friendly soaps, and contractor estimates. Our total budget came out to around $1.5 million. We split the investment, keeping enough of our windfall in the bank to stay secure. Which brings me to today. I'm standing on a dusty lot in a high-traffic area off the highway. The concrete foundation for the tunnel has just been poured. The massive underground water tanks were installed yesterday. The sign hasn't been put up yet, but the plans are approved, L&B Premium Auto Wash. Brendan is walking around with a clipboard, talking to the foreman. He looks stressed, but it's a good kind of stress. It's the stress of building something that belongs to you. I lean against my pickup truck, just a Ford F-150. As I watch the construction, a blue Amazon van drives past the lot on the main road. The driver looks exhausted, his eyes fixed on the GPS mounted to the windshield, surrounded by a mountain of cardboard boxes. A chill runs down my spine. I look at my hands. They still have faint scars from the cardboard cuts and the dog fence. I feel bad for the drivers. I think about the rat race. The endless cycle of waking up, destroying your body for a corporation that doesn't know your name, and going to sleep too exhausted to dream. If it wasn't for that crazy, 1 in a million stroke of luck with Dogecoin, I would be in that van right now. I'd be exactly where I was, trapped in a system designed to keep people like me at the bottom. Will the car wash be a massive success? Will we make our money back and become tycoons? I don't know. I really don't. Business is risky, and the world is unpredictable. But as I watch the sunset reflect off the freshly poured concrete of my own business, I know one thing for absolute certain. I am never peeing in a plastic bottle again.